Surbhi, I'll hand you over for the Q&A. So if you want to look at it, I think we've got quite a few questions coming in, and we'll be happy to answer all of those. So,
all right.
Surbhi?
Yes. So Amardeep has a question. What is the salary requirement for second type of investment visa? So I think what you meant by second type was the tier two sponsor license. Yes.
So, Amardeep, what happens with the tier two is the Home Office has a prescribed list in terms of the different job codes, and there is minimum salary requirements on there. So if we were doing an intra-company transfer, if we're moving an employee from one company subsidiary to the other one, typically you're looking at a salary of about 45,000. If we have to do a resident labor market test, then the salary levels could be higher at about 55,000. Under the sole representative visa, you just need to pay the minimum wage. So you could be paying 35,000 on the sole representative. So I hope that helps you to get a perspective.
Right. We have a similar question by Neeraj. What will be the minimum threshold salary which needs to be paid to an employee under the sole representative visa?
So Neeraj, as I said, the minimum wage is what you need to be aiming for. So typically it's a balance between a minimum wage and something that you would pay a senior executive. So, anywhere between £3,000 gross a month to start from is a good place to be. So, you're looking at about £36,000 gross at the minimum.
Perfect. We have a question by Victoria. As for eligibility, if my family members, if my family members are directors and together we hold about 47%, can she apply for the sole representative?
So Victoria, that's a very interesting one, and there are two parts to this answer. If your individual shareholding is not a majority one, then that makes you eligible to apply for this. But if your spouse, is holding another part of those shares, and between you and your spouse, it comes up to the majority, then obviously the Home Office will have a bit of a challenge. But if you, as an individual, do not have a majority shareholder, then the combined shareholding of your family being at 47% will definitely, it won't be a hindrance for you. You'll still be able to be eligible to apply for it, subject to meeting all the other requirements as well.
Right, perfect. All right. We have another question by Atif Noor. He's just wondering what documents of the company are required. Do they need audited financials of the company being represented?
So typically, I mean, the Home Office, needs to know whether this is a business which is genuine, which is subsisting. So, you can look at providing in company-related documents like the P&L account, the balance sheet, for at least 2 years if the business has been running for that long. And in addition to that, you can look at providing in, documents like the incorporation certificate or the memorandum and the articles. So anything which evidences the nature of the business of the company, and anything which shows that the company is a trading and a going concern, you can provide all of that.
Right. So I think, Atif, that answers your next question as well. So yes, the company, he has a similar question. Is there any requirement to how old that company should be?
Not particularly. I mean, as I said, there is no prerequisite. The rules don't say that the company has to be minimum 2 years or 5 years or 10 years. We've done sole rep visas for startups, which have just been set up 2 months ago or 3 months ago, kind of a thing. So as long as, the company is able to evidence that it has adequate funds for expansion, either through equity funding or through, their round 1 or round 2 fundings, or through their profitability or reserves, they'll be fine. So there's no specific age requirement for the company.
Perfect. I hope that answered your question, Atif. And Ashok, yours too, you had a similar question. All right, moving on, we have a question by Zam. Is there any minimum limit to turnover in overseas business? If yes, how could a startup show that figure?
Right. So as I said, the Home Office allows to say that, you should have adequate funds for expansion. It doesn't say that you have to have the turnover for expansion. So if there's a startup, let's say that, the company's just started 1 month and they're not clocking any turnover yet, but, they have a bank guarantee on the basis of any kind of assets, and that bank guarantee is worth 2 to 3 CR. Or if there is an investor in that business and the investor says, I'm prepared to invest 4 to 5 crores in this business. So there are different ways that even a startup can look at leveraging this. Even if it's a business which has been running for 2 to 3 years, we can have a look at the profitability of the company, or if the directors of the company have their own assets, or if they are willing to pump in more business. So, we did an application for a family-owned business where, one of the directors who was, the majority shareholder, and he wanted to make this application for a senior employee who happened to be his son. And he said that, I have a personal net worth of 15 CR, and I will be investing at least another 5 CR into this business. And that was sufficient to make an application.
Okay, all right. We have a question. Have you any cases of a sole representative business qualify for this visa? Does individual stock trading as a business qualify for this?
When we look at it, as far as the requirements go, this doesn't apply to proprietorship. So if you are in a business as an individual and it's a sole proprietorship and you want to apply under this route, then you would not be eligible under the sole representative, if I'm understanding your question correctly.
Okay.
Does that help, Survi? Is that?
Yeah, I think that helps. You'll be allowed to speak once we are done with the Q&A. So if you need any clarifications, you could speak up.
Sure.
We have a question by Vidhi. Is it possible for a husband's proprietorship business to send wife as a sole representative?
Vidhi, I mean, it used to be possible till before the 4th of June this year. So if you had asked me that question in March or April, I would have answered that in the affirmative, and that would have been possible. But after the 4th of June, it doesn't work. So if you were to apply as a spouse or as a senior employee, and if you were granted the visa, and then if your husband decided to apply and join you as a dependent, then he wouldn't be permitted to apply under this route. So after the 4th of June, that doesn't work. Right.
All right. So Vinay has a question. I have set up for holiday business since 2009. Mm-hmm. So do you think that business is going to do well in the UK?
I mean, we have worked with a variety of businesses. We've had travel operators. We have a volunteering solutions company. We have an overseas education company. So really, I mean, we can look at the details, and again, it would depend in terms of what is the strength of this particular company, what business are you in, what's your turnover, and so on and so forth. So once we do a personalized review, we can give you a more definitive answer. But on principle, there's nothing which bars a company from making this application, even if they are into the kind of business that you're in.
Right. All right. We have a question by Manish. If one has more than 50% shareholding, can he sell off his or her stake to be eligible? And do you think there's any restriction for selling those shares before applying for the visa?
Right. So what the Home Office looks at is whether this is a genuine transaction or not. If you've sold in a share and primarily it is to become eligible under this category, then the Home Office will obviously not look at it favorably. And that's one of the reasons why the Home Office says that you need to be putting in the financials for at least 2 years, so they can see whether or not you've changed the structure of the business to facilitate migration. So if it is a genuine business decision, so we've had instances where somebody's selling their shares to a third party, the money's coming into the business, and then they're making this application, that's fine, as long as it's a genuine transaction. However, if you are selling it to another family member and it does appear that there's not enough money which is exchanged for that share, or it doesn't appear to be a genuine transaction, or you've gifted your share to someone, then obviously the Home Office will look at the timing of it and question whether this is genuine or not.
Right. All right. We have a question by Rahul. What should be the minimum funding required to apply for this visa?
So Rahul, as we covered in the presentation as well, the Home Office says that you need to have adequate funding. They don't define a minimum one. However, in our experience, we have seen that generally, if a business is able to show that they have at least £100,000, then that helps. But again, it's not an individual number. It's not just the amount for investment. We have to look at the totality. What is the scale of the business? What is the general turnover, and so on and so forth. So all of it has to come in together. And if everything else is tying in, then about £100,000 is adequate.
Perfect. All right. Ms. Raman has a question. I am rendering the services to multinational companies as a human resource consultant. Own organization since 2008, one of the top consultants. What's a bright chance for the sole representative visa if she applies?
So again, I mean, if this is being set up as a sole proprietorship, or if it is just yourself as an individual who's running this as a business, then it won't fall for approval under this particular route. However, if you've incorporated your company as a recruitment or a resource consultancy, and you're a shareholder in it, and you're not the majority shareholder, then yeah, you would still be eligible under that.
All right, we have another question. What are the chances of having an interview for this visa, and how much is the success rate if someone has already been to the UK on a dependent visa and got back on voluntary return?
Yeah, so the Home Office reserves the right to interview anyone for any category visa. So, there isn't any category where you could say that, okay, an interview may not happen. There is a lesser probability. I mean, in our experience over the last kind of 3 years, we haven't seen that many interviews happen. However, that trend is changing over the recent 6 months, where we've seen an increasing incidence of people being asked to attend an interview. And again, there isn't a specific pattern to it to say that, okay, if you are in this kind of a profile, then you will be asked to an interview. We've had, senior directors of multi-million-pound company, being called for an interview. And we've had applicants whose company had a turnover of 6 to 7 crores who got the visa without an interview. So the idea is that it's good to be prepared, that if you're going to be called for an interview, then you should be able to answer those questions which relate to your business. But there isn't a mandatory requirement to say that it will definitely happen, as a part of the process. The Home Office has introduced a genuineness criteria to see whether you're a genuine employee or not. And part of it then also goes to say, okay, what gives you the experience to be nominated as a sole representative? So if you've traveled to the UK, it can help. You can show that you understand the market and so on and so forth. But again, it's not a prerequisite. I mean, we work with companies in Coimbatore and, in Hyderabad even, where, the sole representative has never been to the UK. But, the company had nominated him or her to be the sole representative, and they got through the visa without an interview. So, that's not a prerequisite again.
Right, but it does add to the credibility. Yeah,
it can help. Yes. Yeah.
All right. We have another question by Victoria. What are the requirements for renewal? So after 3 years, are there any requirements when you are towards the ILR stage?
Yeah, I mean, so the initial visa is granted for a period of 3 years, and then at the end of 3 years, you are looking at making an application for an extension, which is granted for another 2 years. Typically, at the time of extension, the Home Office will be looking at what you've done in country as a sole representative for that particular company. So the key requirement obviously is whether you've incorporated a subsidiary or not. That's the main requirement. And then the Home Office will look at seeing whether you've been paid salary, whether you paid your taxes on time, and if you've done some activity to justify your presence as a sole representative in the UK. So those are the kind of things that typically the Home Office looks for.
All right. We have a question by Al Michael. Some questions for the sole rep. Is there a maximum age or a minimum age requirement? Is there a minimum qualification requirement?
The short answer is, I mean, as far as the minimum requirement goes, I mean, you need to be 18 years, and over to kind of apply for that. But in terms of the maximum age criteria, there isn't a restriction. If you are an economically active person, you're still employed by a company. The oldest application that we've done is for a client who was aged about 69 years. And he was active in the business as an employee of the company, and he was one of the founder directors, and that application went through without a problem. We also do applications for young, employees, who are in the age group of 20 to 25. As long as they can demonstrate that they are taking care of key functions in the companies, and that's why they're senior, then that can help.
All right. We have an interesting question by Manish. Am I eligible to apply for the sole representative visa if my friend helps me by showing that he's an employee in the company? What shall be the documents required?
Well, I mean, so we've already had a look at the documents that the company will need to provide. So we looked at the P&L account and all the rest of it. The Home Office does look at the genuineness of the employment. So if you are genuinely working with your friend's company, and if, you know, it won't be a hindrance, you know, as long as you can evidence your employment with your friend's company.
All right, so that is doable, Manish. I hope that answers your question. All right, we'll take up, I think, last two questions now.
Sure.
I'll just look out for some. All right, let me just ask you participants, those who raised your hands, and just feel free to unmute yourself. I'm going to allow you to speak. Nishant, I see that you've raised your hand. Hi, Nishant. Nishant, please feel free to unmute yourself.
I can move to the next one.
All right. Vinay, you've raised your hand. Do you have a question for us?
Hello.
Yes, hi, Vinay.
Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yes, we can hear you, Vinay.
Yeah. Basically, see, earlier I asked you, I'm into tourism industry, and suppose if I want to set up a restaurant in UK or Scotland, is it possible?
So again, Vinay, well, depending on what the main business is of the company in India that is going to sponsor you on the sole representative, if it is a hospitality company, and if it is showing that, you know, hospitality is one part of our business, and, you know, either we're looking at expanding in that area or something, as long as the memorandum and the articles of the company will validate that, yes, this is a permissible activity from the main company's perspective, it will allow you to set up, you know, you can then look at setting up a restaurant in the UK. That won't be a problem. For some clients, what tends to happen is maybe the primary area of the business is not in that domain. So in that case, maybe a workaround is that, you know, if the spouse is interested in that particular business, they could set up a, you know, a company in the spouse's name, and the spouse could be running that particular business. So, you know, that's possible. You could set up another business in a different area under your spouse's name if, you know, they have an interest in that business.
Or is to do a setup of the hotel with the restaurant facility, because I'm into the holiday
Yeah,
package
absolutely.
tours.
Yeah, absolutely. That's possible. Yeah, that'll be fantastic.
Right. Thank you very much, Hemang.
Pleasure.
Yeah.
All right. Arun, please feel free to unmute yourself. Hi, Arun. Can you hear me? All right. Okay. All right. I'm afraid we'll have to end the session. We are running out of time now, but I will personally get in touch with all of you, those who've attended the webinar today. Like we mentioned earlier, we'll be sharing the presentation with everybody, and yes, we'll get in touch with you. You have my email ID in case you need to get in touch with me. Thank you so much for attending the webinar. I hope all of you all found this interesting and it was insightful. Stay safe.
Yeah, yes. Sorry. So just wanted to jump in there to say that, you know, we made a note of all the questions that you've raised. So, you know, if you've typed in a question in the Q&A box, rest assured we will be coming back to you with an update on the answers. So all of those will get answered. Yes. And you know, just on the presentation that we're going to send across to you, you will also see that, you know, we have our contact details. So, you know, you have our location, our email addresses, our phone numbers. So if you want to reach out to us, you'll be able to do that as well. So this will all be part of, you know, the handout that you would get. So thank you very much for your time this evening.